so the automation of the PAM deployment. So we want for our customers to be able to carry out tasks in a more agile way. So our speakers today, I'll start actually with Joris. Joris, maybe you can introduce yourself. So this is your picture right here on the screen. Don't be shy. Yes, I work at Claranet. I'm responsible for the infrastructure services, for the automation, and so on and so forth. Okay, thank you. Joris, Emmanuel? Yes, I'm Emmanuel Pierre. I am a product manager at WALLIX. So we deal with management of products and product lifecycle. Yes, and I'm Julien Castignol. I'm in charge of the pre-sale aspects at WALLIX. So let us start by telling you a little bit about who we are. WALLIX is a European company. We're a leader in access and identity management, or identity and access management, depending on how you want to say it. We work in 80 countries. We have more than 180 resellers. In 2020, we did about 20 million euros turnover. And I think we have 1,300 clients. So currently on those markets, our specialty, our historic specialty is PAM, so privileged account management. Our DNA is to be a conduit to protect access to sensitive information. We try to create a framework to make it possible for people to access data for Devops in a lot of different contexts. We have an ANSI certification. So first level safety certificate, security certificate, and one of the important things that has been noted by Gartner or a bigger call is that on top of working on PAM, high-level PAM, we also are a very simple solution. It's easy to use. You don't need any complicated agents. You don't need a lot of operations, and this is going to be very important for our conference today. Emmanuel? Yes, so here you have a small slide. It's probably quite difficult to read from where you are. So it's all of our portfolio. We have a lot of different softwares. We have Office for Identity, MFA, safety of the different computers as well, so workstations, and we try to really work on lateral attacks. We have, again, PAM, so this is the main thing we do, privileged access management, privileged access rights management, and we'll talk about that some more in a second. So anything to do with your session. How do you access what, how, when, with what rights and what approvals? Secret management as well. This is quite important as well. Centralizing the secret policies, secrecy policies, anything to do with reporting, dashboard, and so on and so forth. And we are today more particularly interested in how to interact with different users, how to share secrets, and how to use DevOps tools that we're going to tell you more about. So Terraform, for example, and we're going to give you a presentation about all of those modern tools that are used for infrastructure, for deployment. We have a lot of different suggestions in terms of organizing your security. So let's have a look at the target right in the middle, right here. So this used to be our portfolio. So the question is who, what, when, and how. So who can access what, when, and how. Very often it's a human accessing a machine, so we have to manage anything to do with troubleshooting, forensics. We have to know what happened, be able to raise red flags if necessary. If someone tries to log in, even though they may not, they don't have the right to do so, we need to feed that back to the management. Is there a rebound from a strange server where we have suspicions that it's not authorized? So we will raise a red flag or interrupt a session. So a lot of things have to do with that. Suppressing shared accounts or lateral movements. There are some passwords that have never changed on some machines, so we have to find them. We have to manage them. We have to get rid of them in order to avoid any lateral movement. We have to also get rid of any passwords that are clearly written. I mean, things have changed a little in that respect nowadays, but we do need to be vigilant as far as all that is concerned, and also make endpoints safe. So if it's an administrator computer, if it's a server, for example, you have to make sure that everything is absolutely safe and securized. So how does PAM work? Well, this is getting into a very Bastion theme. We're going to turn to what we said before. When you go from the top to the bottom and from left to right, you have different users that have privileges or don't, that may access some targets on an internal network or an internet network, so they can use a phone or they can use a workstation. And at the back of that, we manage anything to do with sessions. So we record and control what you're doing in real time. And we also manage the elements that are to be protected. So everything on the right-hand side, we try to have all the targets protected, all the targets managed by the PAM as well. Secrets are put in a safe, which will be able to manage policies and rotation strategies. We also brief DevOps, very important as well, and we work on password management. So the rules of rotation, need to change the passwords regularly, change the certificates. So this is done via the cloud, but also on premises, so within your company. And we also deal with anything to do with production chains in factories. This is a lot of our customer base. Yeah, so let me turn more precisely to the main theme of our conference, so DevSecOps. What is it? You have a definition on the screen. So the idea is you have a full build idea. It's important to really put safety or security at the center of those issues without it being perceived as something annoying, as a pain. Like no one wants to think about it, but it is. Not only is it necessary, it can also not be an obstacle in any way. So the idea for us is to go faster in the development and the deployment of our solutions. So and WALLIX Bastion is so our ability to integrate within DevSecOps helps us be more agile and deploy things more rapidly, deploy solutions more rapidly, more quickly. Here is an example of a DevOps process. So we are going to code, create an app, we will compile it, build it, and then we will test it, of course. That's always necessary. And then we focus on the CI/CD logic. So continuous integration, continuous deployment. We'll put that on a BitLab with its own test processes, and that will then deploy the app. It's an important constraint. If you deploy an app, you have to be secretive about it, and if you have secrets, you have to keep them safe, and a secret is always a vulnerability. So you also have to focus on, if you create an application and you want to put it and protect it through the Bastion, what are you going to do in order to avoid any manual tasks? How are you going to be fully automated in order to avoid any human error? So the goal is to avoid any multiplication of vulnerabilities. We have those vulnerabilities when we code, when we deploy, when we don't carry out every test. And it's very important to have, as much as possible, everything automated in order for everything to be integrated to the DevOps activity. And at its very core. I think my remote control is on strike. No, it seems to be working again. Manuel? Yes, absolutely. So how do we keep all that safe? How do we make all that safe? Well, let me focus first of all on, we were presenting what we had in the portfolio so far. We have some safety tools that are going to be integrated with plugins and so on and so forth. So Ansible, Terraform, for example. If you have secrets, this is aimed at protecting them, helping you to protect them. I'll let Joris give you a more detailed presentation about that. We have the same thing for GitHub, GitLab, and Jenkins. You need secrecy everywhere. If you want to publish something, to move from one environment to the next, you need for that to be automated. You need for the passwords to be hidden from the code. It's important to manage that upstream. And then at the back of that, we also have much more infrastructure-focused themes, such as, so APM is application to application password management. So this is what creates the link between your apps and the password vault in a way that is as safe and as transparent as possible, because transparency needs not to be an obstacle for the fluidity of DevOps. And when you move to the cloud as well, you have a lot of containers. So how do you manage to keep all those containers safe and to keep the environment as a whole safe as well? And I will now leave the floor to Joris, who is going to tell us more about the Claranet approach. Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to start with a couple of slides to present the company. Claranet is a company that is focused on the transformation of companies. It was created in '96. We have about 10,000 customers. We're present in 10 international countries. We have 2,100 collaborators, a bit more actually, 700 in France. And here's a slide to present our expertise data. So we have, sorry about that. So we have a very, very strong expertise in safety. We work on support for security audits, blind tests, application security, security in the cloud and in other environments. We are very much cloud experts. So with all different cloud providers, we work on FinOps, we work on a lot of different things. I'm not going to go into details here, but we're also data experts, so big data, migration of big volumes of data. We work on productivity with Office 365, for example, and we also have services offered like professional services and some trainings as well. There we go. So let's get into the gist of it. Why should you choose WALLIX, I guess? Well, when you pick a Bastion solution, you look at what's happening on the market, right? And here is basically the main bullet points. Not everything is on the list, of course, but these are the reasons why Claranet chose WALLIX. So first of all, the deployment was super easy, streamlined. WALLIX is one of the solutions. When you deploy one instance, one machine, you have something that you can use and that you can work with. You have an isolated environment, a safe environment, you have proper traceability, you can give authorizations. It's very practical, very streamlined, and when you need to automate something, the least, the smallest the number of things you need to deploy, the better off you are. So we also wanted to work on APIs. This is also very important, and we also wanted to be flexible. I can't remember why I have that bullet point on the list, but it's true that flexibility, I guess it reminds me of the fact that WALLIX was quite flexible with us in terms of the contract. When you make a commitment, when you sign with a company, it's important to have some degree of contractual flexibility. The tool in and of itself as well, the Bastion, makes it possible to associate modules that are not always a part or an integral part of the tool from the get-go, but you can add some functionalities that weren't available at the beginning. So I guess this is probably why I have that point on there. The proximity of the teams. WALLIX is in France, they're based in Paris, so they're near. I mean, there are hubs all over France, but one specifically in Paris. So it's always very pleasant to work in close proximity with your teams, whether it be physical proximity or even over the phone. WALLIX was also implemented already at Claranet, not in the same way, but we did a very broad deployment of their solution. But historically, we used to have some elements that were implemented for some clients. It's very practical because internally we already know what it's about. We already know the people, and we had some people who had been trained already, so that was a major asset. And the last point that I have on the list is the fact that it's a well-recognized company. If you have a hosting company, it's very important for that to be recognized widely. I mean, it goes faster. They have some certifications, you can trust them. So that's quite important as well. The issue for Claranet was mostly focused on automation. So why? Well, because, of course, we work on hosting in a lot of data centers. We have a lot of facilities. We're multi-provider, multi-country. So we have networks that are complicated with scopes that are more or less securized. We have some health data that we host, for example. So we do have to have some Bastion instances all over the place in order to satisfy our security criteria. And on top of that, we can also have sometimes some resilience criteria. Let's say a facility is isolated for some reason, you need to have a Bastion over there to be able to keep it running. So we have a very large number of bastions that we need to automate, and we must also have proper conformity management, compliance management. You can't have a bastion that is manually configured. You can't forget anything. It's important to have all the access you need on each and every bastion. If there's an incident, you need to have access. So that's a question of compliance. You also have some policies also regarding how many authorizations a person can have, and then there's also access homogenization. So I think within the framework of Claranet, it's important for all collaborators to be able to access all bastions in the same way in order to make the whole solution easier to use. Then there's the management of common authentication secrets. So in the WALLIX Bastion solution, we have a lot of secrets that are integrated already. Claranet uses a vault provider. So one of the prerequisites was for us to be able to work with that secrets backend, and it was possible. And it's a secret backend that we can automate quite easily. So we are going to use those two products. We have used them to automate the synchronization of secrets. So we have decided to automate the environment with Terraform and HashiCorp. So I'm going to give you a small description of the product. The idea is to work on infrastructure as code. So usually this is a product we know how to develop WAS, GCP, deploy a lot of, deploy configuration for software as a service providers, but we also have a lot of providers, really a lot in the Terraform community, that make it possible for us to industrialize and to work on infrastructure as code on a very large number of products. So we can manage instances for network, storage, DNS, bastions, sometimes to an extent. And yes, so infrastructure as code is written in files. And so you can Gitify it, you can manage the different versions, you know what's been done and changed over time. It's very practical. It's a file that you can share in the shape of blueprints. We can satisfy some specific needs. You can just copy and paste a couple of solutions as well. And Terraform is based on execution plans, operational plans. So you execute a plan which is configured depending on your goal. So you know exactly what's going to be changed, and if you're happy with it, then you validate it, and it gives you a very good level of control over the changes. And we also decided to work with Terraform for automation, so we have a whole concept of auto-apply. You don't auto-apply configurations in a way that you don't control. You just pick a scope, a well-defined scope, where you will authorize yourself to apply configuration changes. So HashiCorp has a tool called Sentinel. So you can use it on Nomad, Vault, Consult, and Terraform. And in the framework of Claranet, we decided to use Conftest, which is a more community-based tool, which we use everywhere. Yeah, if I may just interrupt for a second, just to put things in their context regarding compliance, which I think is very interesting for Claranet. The idea was to say, look, we will have let's say a WALLIX Bastion, and administrator will do something manual. But if they do it, it's sometimes too late. What Claranet did is Claranet separated tasks thanks to our APIs, and via Terraform, they were able to see or to have a Terraform plan, to have that applied by someone else who may have the right authorization. So I think it is mostly about compliance, what we did with you. Absolutely, yes, and I'll come back to the automation process in a second, but absolutely, it is very interesting, and it makes it possible for us to separate different aspects. So how to make a bastion safe with Terraform? First of all, you need to have a provider. And I'm sorry, somehow the remote doesn't work, but when we started working with WALLIX, we didn't really have a solution for Terraform. So we asked WALLIX what they had available. They didn't have anything for Terraform. At Claranet, we're used to using Terraform. This is the solution we picked for infrastructure themes. So we had worked with several providers with them. So we figured, okay, we have the skills, we can do that ourselves. What was interesting for us is that we communicated with WALLIX. They were interested in the project. So WALLIX decided to work with a provider on their end and to provide support over time. So we are going to have a provider that is going to be supported by WALLIX. So now, once you have a provider, what can you manage with Terraform? You can have a look at the resources within the Bastion. So we have an API for WALLIX that covers about 98% of the features, or of the configuration of the Bastion features. So you can have everything you like in that provider in order to have all the resources. And on our end, I'd say we have probably, well, I guess we developed 90% of what can be done through the provider or by the provider. So everything we have a user case that is not developed yet, we add it to the provider and make it available. So there's target management, policies management, and so on and so forth. So you need to have a standard image. You need to, if you want to automate things, you need to have a common goal, right? You need to have an image of the same version that will be deployed in the same way every time. There's no configuration outside of Terraform either. When there are manual actions that are carried out by or in the Bastion, it's outside of the scope and you don't have control. So you have to make sure that you force your administrators to go through the Terraform configuration. Then there's the use of runners to execute Terraform as well. So a runner is a relay that will have, specific accesses in order to connect to the APIs of the bastions that are in other places or that are present in complex networks. Again, we're multi-facilities, multi-providers. We have very isolated networks as well. So it's quite important for us to have a homogeneous solution. So we work with runner relays, which gives us a lot of added value. And we work within a standardized environment. So it's not just a user that will use that or execute that on their own workstation. Do you have some network segmentation tools as well at Claranet? Yeah, the runner is on an isolated network with specific attributions. And we also have specific runners for each use. So we can deploy a runner that will deploy only in one sector and will not have the possibility to do something else. So yes, then we also follow Terraform best practices. When we work with Terraform, we create a plan, first of all, in order to determine what can be changed. We check via the conformity tools like Sentinel or Conftest. We validate that a person, that the configurations are proper, that no one just configured things poorly or badly or in a non-compliant way. For example, you can't deploy more than 20 CPUs or more than a certain number of terabytes of storage room. You can set up limits, and then there's the notion of apply once the check has been done. And once everything is applied, you have the validation as well. This is a best practice. It's not in place everywhere, but sometimes you make a mistake during the application, during the deployment. Something went wrong, network interruption, for example. Terraform missed it, did not see that it went wrong. So we do another validation in order to validate that everything that needed to be configured has been configured properly. Once you have Terraform in place within the company, you have also the training aspects. You need to make sure that everybody knows how to use the tools. We share skills, knowledge, we share users that will have level 1 that are level 1 users, that are able to understand what's happening, that are able to do some changes in terms of routine configuration, and that will be validated by people with a level 2 or level 3 training. So you could have a very broad number of people who have level 1 training and a lot less people who have level 2 or 3 training as well.
Automation, as said, well, to do that, we used GitLab. GitLab, it is a kind of guide in order to have Devops and all kind of functions, which is quite nice as a tool for those who don't use Kittle. As nice as the Bastion, yes, as nice as that, just as the other tools. Well, once you have the CI/CD, you get through pipeline. In a pipeline, you get stages, and a stage is a set of jobs with the same goal. We execute the same jobs of that plan. As I said, the plan, it is what has been configured and what will change the goal. There's no risk, because we are just going to trigger something that will show what will be changed according to the plan. And you can trigger as well automatically all the compliance path with the Sentinel in order to have everything validated. Then you get to the person trained number 2 or 3, and with a manual appliance in order to check whether everything is okay. Once you got apply, the job is validated. So you get through these pipelines. In pipelines, you might get errors, and this is about monitoring. If a pipeline didn't misfunction, you get an alarm, level 2 or level 3 alarm sign in order to check. And emergency quest, energy quest, this is to allow people of level 1 to introduce some changes in the configuration and to push that change to level 2 and 3 trained people. This is a common word when you proceed to Git or guide. You work on configuration and you want to get to level master or main, as you said. You get to this process. I will say it with other words, but concretely, a person which is not sufficiently trained for bastions, and there are some people behind that can validate, so that in a bastion this and this will occur, and you can agree upon that. It is validated. Auto-deploy. We have been talking about the modifications that will be triggered manually, humanly, but there are also configurations that are done automatically. With Claranet, as with others, you've got the CNBB in order to make a difference of all the plates. There's a server which doesn't connect automatically. It is automatically added to the CNDB of Claranet. And if that element then will be registered in different tools. In the framework of the Bastion, it will register into the Bastion, rewrite Terraform, and it will be done on a day-by-day basis. And there is no manual intervention. This is a self-deployment. This is what we do for resources of destination, but also for client domain or whatsoever. Thereafter, and this is very nice, and you can re-back. So you can get back to the former stage. An error was produced, configuration error, something doesn't work correctly. You wrote back, reapply, and you proceed to the analysis about the why. And that's the end of my speech. Shortly today, and thereafter we can deal with the questions. With this, we wanted to take time to plan, and PAM is sensitive. It's about priorities of access, and see, you cannot do that by coincidence. You need to be organized with your teams. With Claranet, we reduce the RAM, as a maximum, and this is an investment at the start in order to avoid sicknesses or illnesses later on. It's about the principle of the reduced number of privileges. Who can do what and why? If you can plan this beforehand, it is a necessity. After that, it becomes very hard to change. Once this is controlled on that basis, one must be in a position to put the tools where you need. For instance, recording of sessions, why and why for. You get also the lateral movement that will happen in a SI, and that is to be avoided. Someone can get through that solution if to access a privilege or to get access to sensitive information, just as application of the past, which used a password. Well, how to get rid of that? And there is a logic of the Devops, and this is bringing a solution. And in the end, good practices. What we do notice on my behalf with WALLIX, that is, if there is any PAM project, the ideal is first to know why we do this project. So we register, we record what people are doing. Recording so that people can get all the keys of that state whatsoever. So we control what they do, also suspect actions. And in that very end, all keys will be put safe. It is about RSI or deciders or a job. For instance, someone doing the OS operations, we will show the video to show what he did wrong. Like this approach, it is about recording, editing, and to put it safe. And now it's time for you to ask questions, if you were to have any question. I'll start. How many bastions do you have? Many bastions. How much is that? Well, we have reached about the number 15 bastions, which are being produced. And there are many planned. There's an extension. We're going to activate this. So I don't know how many there will be in the end, but more than 20. So that was clear. The GitLab, the CDI, the experts key, and so on. Well, my question, it is, why did you keep version 16 of WALLIX? Is that a solution for you? Could you please repeat that question? So the SaaS solution, is that convenient for you? Well, as I said, we have got some sectors where are very isolated. You need a physical specific element for that environment to provide certificates, DSS or whatsoever, because health data is going to be hosted, so you have to abide by the clause of the contract. As such, we deploy machines physically to have also a certain level of resilience, a threshold, you know. As such, you need a bastion within the room in case of cutoff, because the passwords are into the bastion, because the passwords are also into the bastion. But once you get local, you need to connect to the machine, and you need a secret in the bastion. If there is an incident, we don't want to extrapolate. We prefer to keep in classical process, traditional classical process. My question is regarding the length of project, you know, API, flexibility, and as such you could honor your needs or realize. But once Devops took it up, how much time did you need then? Well, it's hard to say. I tend to say we have reached about 11 months or 10 months for this project. A Devops team, with how many people? Well, with this project, we were about for the time being to develop that solution. And after the final administrators, there are about 50 or 60. Well, thank you for this introduction, which was very nice. My question is regarding the secrecy. For Terraform, you have got several bastions. The secrets, how do you manage all these secrets and the secrecy? This is a relevant question. Claranet, we use the vault of C04 to protect the secrecy. We made a choice, we took a decision, which is to synchronize and to centralize this secrecy in the vault. Historically, all Devops tools are based upon that vault. So we need to base that upon that technology, otherwise it would be too expensive. And the secrecy in vault are synchronized with the backend of the different bastions. It is a big advantage because you got a common source, but also the resilience of all the bastions. Each bastion is autonomous and has its own safe of secrecy. It is isolated, but it can get connected to resources. To add upon the strength, it is the capacity to have external safes, just as Claranet, but a bastion can also be its own safe. You were talking about secrecy which were spread, disseminated. You've got one safe regarding the other, to face the other. Claranet is really putting the focus on that bastion. It is about encoding, recording what the administrator has been doing. And the password, it's about the secondary level of a safety level which is already installed. Do you use Cube? And do you have administrator to act straightforward on Cube? If it's the case, do you use the WALLIX solution to record all the actions that are done via QAPI? Yes, we do use Cube, but it is outside of this scope. As such, we use the bastions to access Cube, to access to management of the administration of Cube. But that's it. No specific implementation in this project. And another question. So don't hesitate to come to our stand downstairs. We will add some information. Thank you for this presentation. At the start, you were talking about the issue of the multiplicity of bastions and the issue of the uniformity of access. We have to face the same issue. And for the time being, WALLIX did send us to Access Manager, which is a kind of a portal which allows to address the right bastion. And something I'd like to get to understand is how this is being integrated. Is there a function? Is it the same, or it is not the same user environment? In the case of Claranet, we optimize the access. We optimize the access manager function. Not all, because we're not in a position to do everything, but in the user and the user of the administrator, we use something specific. So there is a service encoded to generate NTP on the API of the bastion, because otherwise we started automatically external customers or tools on RDP. And as such, links were generated on the CNDB interface or on the monitoring. So we choose another kind of integration, right? And that was done before you knew why. Yes, we don't know the product manager. It is already installed for a case of a client with Claranet, and we chose something different, which is more compliant to our own use of this. I can get back to this because very soon WALLIX will acquire Claranet on all these ideas, everything they decided, they developed. Access Manager is not adapted to their use. To our vision, it is a concentration of a remote access and of several bastions, because it is about the context of separated bastions and really different. Either you can automate the target, or you cannot because of the client, and Access Manager will play a role as a DMZ, but also as a concentrator for different administrators of different populations. So get to our stand downstairs. We can talk about this, but it covers a precise role which was not the one of Claranet. Thank you for that. No more questions? Yes, so don't hesitate to come to our stand downstairs to talk about Cube. All right, thank you for that. No questions, and the stand is A723. It's right over there, and I thank A723 and Claranet is C25. We are just next to the stand with Exit Trust, so you can get something over there. You can get information about our map, our products, and the future of PAM according to WALLIX.